Hi, I'm Erik Brynjolfsson, and we are here with Imagination in Action in Davos. And I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah Heck, Head of Policy at Anthropic. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. What a wonderful time to be here.
I'm so good to have a chance to talk to you. AI is all the talk here in Davos, and increasing the whole world. And you're right in the middle of it. Let me just start with a very broad question. You're head of policy. What are sort of the issues that are top of mind right now? What are people asking you about, and what are some of the messages that you think people should be hearing?
Yeah. We obviously are a company that is very focused on both creating frontier models, but also ensuring that AI goes well for humanity. That's part of our mission at Anthropic. And so we think about policy issues that relate to AI in the sort of the broadest sense of the word. We are thinking about everything from how do we make sure that AI is safe, deployed safely, so that businesses and individuals can utilize this technology for productivity and enhancing their own lives. We think about, how do we position AI in America for AI and to lead for democracies to lead on it. And then we think about things like, the economic impacts of AI and how we should think about how economies will change, how that will affect job creation and job loss. And so it's really a wide range of issues that we think about because AI affects everything in society. And so what I will really say is there's not a policy issue that doesn't come across my desk.
Well, let me pick one that I'm especially interested in. I'm an economist at Stanford, at the Stanford Digital Economy Lab, and also my company WorkHelix. And so one of the things I'm really grateful to Anthropic is the AI Economic Index that you guys created. And I've been pushing the other frontier labs to follow your lead. You are setting the pace on this, where you look at all the prompt data and figure out how that maps to different kinds of tasks in the economy. What are people doing? What are people not doing? How they're doing it for augmenting work or automating work. You just came out with a fourth edition.
We did.
Thank you. Give us some of the headlines of what you're learning about the economy from that, or what we can learn from it.
Yeah. So we're really excited about the Anthropic Economic Index, and I'm mostly excited that people like you are able to utilize it.
Not just me. There's so many grateful economists. You're winning a lot of friends.
Yeah, we open source all the data, and so the whole point is that we need a sort of a community of people to look at this data. But I think we've been tracking the economic data that for Anthropic over the past year, and our last report I think was really interesting in a couple of ways. We introduced a concept called economic primitives, so we're actually tracking a handful of different indicators across the economy, not just augmentation and automation, but things like how if people are using it for education or for professional use or for personal use.
Right.
I think one of the things that was most interesting to me from this last report is actually the speed of diffusion of AI across the United States in particular. We see that diffusion is happening at about 10 times faster than past technologies. And so,
Say a little bit about how you're measuring diffusion.
so basically, the percent of people that are using AI or the percentage that's being used across the different professional
Yep.
tasks that we track. When we first started tracking, to nobody's surprise, we were seeing a lot of usage in California and New York and Utah, but we're just seeing the diffusion spread very quickly in places that
Globally.
globally as well.
Yeah.
Although we do see sort of differentiation between high income countries and low income countries. And that's one of the things that we're actually quite concerned about. I think we want to make sure that AI is useful for everybody and that we're not actually creating more wealth disparity as a result of it. And so, from a public policy perspective, we think about tracking this data through the Anthropic Economic Index as one of the ways to sort of now cast and future cast,
Yes.
so that we can make policy decisions today and not regret that we didn't make them a year or
That
2
is
or
so
5
important
years.
because so many policymakers, so many business executives are kind of flying blind. A lot of the government data is out with a lag and it's not with the granularity. That speed of diffusion is really important because a lot of important technologies, the steam engine, electricity, it took years or decades to get widespread use. The great thing about AI is you can deliver it over the internet, very quickly, and it doesn't take a lot of special skills to write a prompt. That said, there does seem to be a gap between the people using it and then the economic impact. So I think we are seeing lots of uptake of people writing prompts. At the same time, the economic statistics are not showing as much of a boost in overall productivity or even changes in jobs quite as much. Maybe there's some canaries in the coal mine, but
Yeah. I think there's a couple of indicators that we're watching very closely. We a couple months ago first started tracking productivity, basically looking at how fast a human could sort of normal human without AI could do a task, and then how Claude helped that. And we basically are seeing that uh, we think that the economy will grow at about 1.8% per year over the next 10 years at current model capabilities. And so that's basically,
Wait, an additional one? Wait, sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
what an additional
So
one.
add an additional 1.8%. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a lot.
Which is,
Just a lot of people might say 1.8, well, that's not very much. But for an economist, like, oh my God,
yeah.
the base rate is only about 1.8%. So you're essentially talking about
Yeah.
doubling.
So we're basically looking at sort of the growth rates of the 90s and early 2000s in the US.
That's
Which,
what it was during the
yeah.
internet era.
Yeah. And so if you think about, okay, well, when we were tracking that, we were looking, frankly, at Claude Sonnet 4.5, which is our not most powerful model. The models are only getting better. And so if that's what's happening at current capabilities of models, it might look very different into the future. And that's one of the things that we're trying to sort of look ahead, see around the corner, and make sure policymakers are thinking about that.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. But that's a prospective estimate, this 1.8%. When you actually look at what's happening today on the ground, we're not seeing numbers quite like that. Can you say a little bit about what we can do to close the gap? What can we do to get people not just using it on their, laptop or their phone, but actually changing the way work gets done?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things. Obviously, Claude is really known for our coding work, and so we're seeing
Yes.
huge amounts of usage of Claude code, throughout primarily sort of computer science and software engineers. But a couple of weeks ago, we released a thing called Claude Cowork, which is basically allows people that are non-technical like me that don't know how to write code, and they can just in native language code things. And so we'll be watching this space very carefully. But I think we're just going to see a lot more productivity and sort of how do you build software integrations in non-technical capacities. I'm really excited about this, not only for sort of enterprise and startups, but I think about how small businesses in America and across the world can leverage this not only to make a lot of their tasks faster, like, their accounting or how they're doing their marketing, but also building those sort of software platforms that they need and the ability to do that in-house.
That is so important because it's great what you're doing for coders, but let's face it, that's a tiny percentage of the workforce. If you can open up for the rest of us, everyone else, that's going to make a much bigger productivity impact. And that's what Eric Schmidt, we were just talking with Eric literally a few minutes ago, and that was what he was emphasizing was that now, and you with MCP, the protocol, what is it, the
MCP protocol. Yeah.
that you can tap into agents and have them share across a lot of different platforms and people can do real work. And he feels like this is going to be the year or the next few years where ordinary people with no special coding skills will be able to use agents to do all sorts of work. And that could be
Yeah.
transformational.
I mean, I think 2025 was sort of the proof of concept of AI agents, and 2026 is going to be proof of impact. We're going to see this rapidly deploying across the economy. Again, we're already seeing it in our data, but I think as the models improves and then the products on top of that, Cowork and others, it's just going to be sort of rapid diffusion. And frankly, our economic data continues to bear that out. We have one indicator where we look at the percentage of tasks in every occupation that can be done by Claude. When we started tracking this metric, about a third of tasks could be done automatically by Claude.
Yep.
And in this last report, it was almost at 50%. So we're just seeing a rapid transformation of the capabilities of the models and then people utilizing them. Obviously, not equally across the
Oh
economy,
no,
but
it's not very uneven. But so that's a big boost in productivity. Productivity has two parts, output and input, or output and labor. And it's great to have more productivity and more output. But a lot of people are concerned about the denominator and what's going to happen to the workforce. And Dario, your CEO, has expressed concerns that there could be widespread job loss. What are your thoughts about how we address that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great to put out data, but we actually have to have solutions. And I think one of the things that we think a lot about at Anthropic is it's not it's not useful for a technology company in Silicon Valley to just give all the answers, but we really need to work with our customers, with businesses across the US and across the world to figure out how they are thinking about retraining. I think that there are probably some,
Yeah,
government interventions that we need to work with policymakers on, everything from, ideas that we've gotten from the many economists that we pull together on a regular basis to say, okay, well, how do we incentivize workforce transformation programs within companies, within communities? Everything from that to sort of what do we do if there is real widespread unemployment at the to the tune of 20 or 25%, and what are the policy ideas that make sense at sort of every level of that? Because I think if we jump all the way to the most extreme scenario, which may be the case, we sort of lose the idea that we can incrementally do this, and then we need to do this as a community, but also as a society. And I think that's a lot of what we're talking about here at Davos.
totally. And I share your sense of urgency. I think, it's amazing the way the capabilities are advancing so rapidly. At the same time, our adjustment, our ability to understand them economically have not advanced much. Our policy writ large has not been keeping up. So I share that urgency. That's what we do at the Stanford Digital Economy Lab very much, and we're happy to work with you. I will say there's a ray of hope that I found from your data when we looked at folks who are using Claude for augmenting what they were doing versus people who are using it mainly to automate. The augmenting group had significantly growing employment and productivity. So it's really a win-win. With the automating, not so much. So, but it does tell you that there's a path. If we can think of more ways of pushing people, encouraging people to find ways to not just replace what they're doing, but augment, do new things that never could have done before, that's where there's going to be a more widely shared prosperity.
Totally. And I think the other, to double click into that
Yeah,
sort of augmentation automation thing, our last report actually had automation outpacing augmentation. It flipped back in this report and we sort of dug down. And I think the thing that was most interesting to me is that people were being augmented to do the most difficult tasks. So that meant that people were actually working with Claude to
yeah,
solve real problems.
yes.
Now, I think Claude and all the other models will get better. And so some of that will become quicker. But I sort of love the idea that we're trying to challenge humans to do even better, harder, deeper thinking work, and to do that augmented by Claude.
Absolutely. That's when you learn. And in education, you don't want students to just have a quick, easy answer. You want them to struggle. But that's also how society and civilization advances by going after those tough problems that we now have more powerful tools. Sarah, it's been such a pleasure having a chance to talk to you.
Thanks
And
for doing.
congratulations on all you've been doing.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.